Hello folks, how's it going? Hope everyone's good. Doing good here, ready to draw. Alright, so we're gonna probably start with like a 15. I've been in this 15 kind of cycle recently. Chris says, don't see why I can't be a member again. I don't know, you are a member, are you not? Are you not a member, Chris? You should be a member. I thought you were a member. I don't know what to tell you. You should be. Hold on, let me just check something quickly. Let's see what's going on here. No, Chris, you are not a member. I don't know, man. Maybe you stopped with the membership. I don't know what to tell you. All right, we need to draw. You can become a member again, right? And it brings up a good point. Members have access to, for these long streams, members have access to the reference. So it pays to be a member. I'm sorry to hear that, Chris. You'll have to take that up with your bank. All right, let's draw. Yeah, well, let's start with the 15. I am going to, let me change to, there we go. I'm going to probably work close up for the most times. Yeah, let's do this. I'm actually going to probably work quite a bit closer than I have been, because for me at least, it's this upper and lower torso which I find really interesting. So that's what I want to focus on. Upper and lower, sitting somewhere in there. The leg is going down this way. We drew this model a while back, different poses, but she's so lean that it really is a lovely opportunity to look at the anatomy. Manubrium's going to be there. Sternocleidomastoid coming up this way as an extension of this rhythmical idea, right? I know I harp on about that, but it's, for me, it's the most important neckline to get in first, is that sternocleidomastoid, for the most part. Yeah, reference, the daily practices, the references on screen. For these, because the reference is censored, or uncensored, should I say, the reference is for members. So rib cage sitting in like this, something like that. And we can really clearly see, you know, hiatus. We have this compression point here, we come down the form. Hiatus is sitting right about here, right? About there, we can see the other one coming down. Something like so. And her navel is kind of pushed over this way, because there's so much compression going on. Navel's sitting about here. Something like that. Head of the humerus sitting right about here. Now, if this is the compression point, her elbows are right about there, isn't it? And then her forearm coming towards us. Wrist is about there. Her hand sitting on her hip there, like that. The pectoral muscle sitting about so. Deltoid. Something like that. On this side, clavicle coming up, head of the humerus. She's kind of pushing her shoulder forward here, isn't she? So, yeah, head of the humerus is sitting about here. It would normally, if it was a natural pose, it would be sitting out a little, but she's kind of pushing it towards her chin, so to speak. And then this arm is coming this way like this. And her wrist is just over from her elbow. Something like so. Pectoral muscle. It's coming in here. Let's find that V for the thinning out of the pectoral in this region. Helps us subdivide. That's roughly. I might have to adjust that slightly. Deltoid is sitting in here. Bicep coming down this way. Trapezius coming up like so. We got the abdominal wall, we got some compression here. Abdominal wall coming down like so. Okay. Aces is here. This leg is coming in this direction. And kind of coming towards us ever so slightly. Your oblique is sitting in there. So with this pose, what really kind of, the thing, you know, sometimes it can be a really small thing kind of interests me in drawing a particular pose. Honestly, it's kind of the shape of this arm. I just feel like, you know, the way it kind of it gets wider down here, not something that you really would think that you would see. It's kind of fascinating. Elbow. Something like that. Okay. Let's find the rib cage. So we got the latissimus. Rib cage is continuing up that way. Something like that. You know, you can just kind of hint at the ribs there, which we can see quite clearly on the reference, but you know how I feel about drawing ribs. Okay, keep going. Something like so. Come across the form, coming from that. Pectoral coming here. And we can see the latissimus just sitting under there. Something like that. Deltoid. think we're going to go probably another 5 minutes, guys. I thought it would be a 15, but it's not. So yeah, rib cage coming down. She's so lean, there's just almost no compression there, like as far as any fat or anything. Oblique coming down. And then tensor fasciolate coming down this way. Something like that. So iliac crest is going up that way. We can't see it because our hand's in the way, but continues its journey up there. I just need to subdivide here, so I'm just kind of drawing in what I kind of know to be there. And then gluteus medius meeting up with that tensor fasciolate there. Something like that. You can see that sartorius, can't you? That belt-like muscle going down the leg, attaching to the inside of the knee. And we've got quite some dramatic light going on. Got a lovely cast shadow coming off her arm here. Same way in that region there. Cast shadow coming off the breast there, and coming down this way. bit of blend. It's quite the cast shadow coming off this hand actually. This whole area is in tone. Something like that. All right, let's call it. Otherwise, it's gonna turn into a 25-minute pose. Cool. All right. Something to be said for, you know, doing close-ups. Yeah. All right. Let me reset the clock. Let's have a look at the next pose. This one's a doozy. Once again, I'm probably going to close up on this one. Although there's this beautiful rhythmical idea going on with the leg. I'm torn. Let me think about it for a second. No, you know what? I'm going to do full body on this one because it just, even though it's a trade-off, but I think we've got to get this whole pose. So switch to landscape. Move that over. Hopefully you can all see that all right? Cool. Yeah, the skull's pretty cool, isn't it? It's quite something. All right, we'll probably, I'm guessing probably about another 20. All right. Yeah, so many lovely rhythmical ideas with this pose. Let's see if we can do it justice. Volvo says, say something horrible about rotoscoping. You really want me to say something horrible about rotoscoping? What if I like rotoscoping? For those of you who don't know what rotoscoping is, at least in animation, it's a technique where they would film in live action. They would film the scene, let's say, and then they would essentially make what are called stats from it, where they make printouts, and then the animators would trace over those. A particularly notable example of that would be Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings that came out in the 70s. But anyway, so that's what rotoscoping is. And the problem with rotoscoping is rotoscoping looks rotoscoped. No matter how you try, it just always looks like you've traced over live action. And so it gets quite a bit of criticism because of that. Understandably, one might argue. So yeah, it gets criticized, but the rotoscoping has been used in animation quite a bit throughout the years. Even Disney used to use it to some degree or another on some of their old classic films. I've worked on a few productions that tried to employ rotoscoping. I actually worked in the early 90s, I worked on a movie that used rotoscoping there was one shot that comes to mind was there was this dancing scene. And it was flowers dancing, but they had rotoscoped dancers actually doing the actions, thinking it would make life easier for the animators. The problem was, it looked like 120-pound flowers dancing. It didn't have the lightness that you would imagine from a flower. It made it into the film. We don't need to mention which film it was, but yeah. I worked on Prince of Egypt. They tried initially, and I wasn't there at the time, so this is secondhand information, but apparently they did try to rotoscope, because there's so many humans in Prince of Egypt. They did try rotoscoping, they did some tests for it, see if it was going to be a viable option. And they actually abandoned it for the reasons I was just stating. Just doesn't look right somehow. So there you go. You asked about rotoscoping. I've said something about it. Now her head is going off here, but I don't really care. I think there's far more interesting things going on with this pose. Okay, so scapula sitting in here, latissimus, we can kind of see sitting in this area. I fear this model is going to have back issues when she's older. She really is pushing it. And we come to the back of the leg down here, which is interesting. You can almost see that turn, right? From the side of the leg to the back. Her other arm is going out this way, holding onto a stick. So you can kind of see where the rib cage ends here. Sitting here. And we got the stomach coming down to the tummy. Sitting somewhere in there. All right. I'm probably going to start tying down in this general area. Before I do, okay, because I know I'm going to have to make some adjustments here as I go. I think this leg needs to go down just a tiny bit for starters. It's probably about there, but that's okay. That will just help get my overall measurements. Okay. Elbows there. Something like that. Margot, I'm sure it's not that bad. It's a tricky one, you know, like there's a lot of subtlety in the shape language for sure. Something like so. So this passage of the back here, this big long curve, which isn't really a curve, we've got to be really on our guard with it, because we really want the shape language to hopefully be right. And what we don't want to do is just create literally a big long curve. We want to try and find straights, because it's going to help, hopefully, bring tension. So up here we have vertebra, which we're just going to very subtly suggest. Because otherwise it can really get out of hand quickly. Something like that. I don't know if I've really done it justice after all that talk, but something like that. I hope maybe with a bit of tone we can salvage it. Anyway. The stick she's holding is kind of coming down this way. Okay, some very dramatic lighting going on here, so let's hit this with some core shadows. Then as the form turns away from the light, right, the light's almost pretty much directly overhead. So the back has got this really dramatic kind of shadow going on. And a lovely cast shadow coming off this elbow, meeting up with the shadow of the leg as it turns in space. Excuse me. Okay. Yeah, quite tricky. I'm going to put on the garment she's wearing, just in the interest of recording the scene properly. Something like that. All right. I think I've said all I'm going to say there. Not easy, but a fun one nonetheless. Some great shapes to work with. Really lovely. I feel like I could have done probably more, but I'm afraid to overwork it, to be honest. It's pretty delicate balance. Yeah. Throwing this one away post haste. Maybe the fireplace. It can't be that bad. Well, it can. I've done fireplace worthy drawings. I do plenty of fireplace worthy drawings. Don't worry about it. But lovely rhythmical ideas, you know, like it's a great piece of reference. Richard, can you say something about building those arms? Well, this is, in this case, it's tricky because the head of the humerus is way out here, right? It's not where you would conventionally kind of feel like it should be on the form. It's not like she's, I don't know what the word is for it, but you know, she's seriously flexible and she's pulling her humerus, the head of the humerus, more forward than you would normally see in a natural range of motion, let's say. So when I'm looking at something like this, I'm using the scapula kind of as my clue, or my cue to where the head of the humerus would be. And so it's like, okay, scapula's sitting in here, you know, head of the humerus is probably right around this region here. And so understanding where that is, you can kind of build up from there, but it's not a natural pose, right? It's one of the reasons I picked her this whole session, was because it's not conventional in some ways. It's a nice challenge. But I'm not sure, unless you've got a very specific question, I'm not sure what else I can say right now about that. Let's see if the next pose gives us, the next one's not really going to give you any clues. I'll try and explain my process as we move forward. The fold and the fold in the curves at the elbow. The fold and the fold in the curves. Well, what you're really looking at there is, I'm guessing you mean in this region here, we're really just dealing with compression, right? The form is kind of doing this type of thing. You've got a compression spot right here. Yeah. Don't really have a whole lot to say, to be honest, like, or that will be enlightening anyway. I will say this though, with these types of poses, understanding the scapula, understanding the shoulder girdle in general, right? What is the shoulder girdle? The clavicles and the scapula, basically, right? And obviously that's where the head of the humerus attaches under the scapula, under the acromion process, and the clavicle, and it's this wishbone system, right? So it's really useful to be able to think of it in those terms. Yeah, the whole shoulder girdle system it's quite a complex kind of subject, you know. Something that's best observed, I think, to some degree, if you understand the general mechanics of it, which you'll get by looking at like a skeleton, right? Torso seems masculine. Lovely drawing skills. Thank you, Susie. I wouldn't say she's masculine, to be honest with you, Susie. She's just incredibly lean. She's incredibly lean. One of the leanest models that we've worked with, like, you can really see her rib cage, like the back of the rib cage on the back, which is unusual, even though she's stretching. You know, this model is very close to being too thin, you could argue. But she seems like she's athletic too, so where the forearm meets the elbow and then the upper arm. That's a huge challenge. Yeah. Yep. It is. It's true. Let's move on to the next pose. Okay, we're back to portrait. This one should hopefully be a little simpler. Let's see. So, Aditya asks, so can you explain how you move your hand and your pencil? And then Heather asks, what happened to daily drawing with the reference photo? Well, if you go and see, we did one yesterday. Did we do one the day before? I've done 2 or 3 so far. They're coming. There's going to be more of them, Heather. I'm not going to necessarily do them every single day. I'm trying to do them obviously on off days, the days we're not doing the long streams. But no, I've been doing them. I strongly suggest, and not, this isn't directed necessarily at Heather, but for those of you who are keen to follow those daily streams, I would recommend you hit that bell notification thing that's somewhere on the page, so that you get notified, because I'll post for those daily streams, I'm posting them maybe 2 or 3 hours before they actually happen. They're not scheduled, right? They're kind of a when I feel like it kind of thing. She's very narrow for a female. Yeah, she's very long and lean, Susie. You're right. Can you explain in rapport to shadow and light, which lines should be thinner and which are thicker? I assume you're talking about whether you have core shadow or not. Let me see if I can explain this real quickly, and then I'll come to your Aditya. I won't forget about you. Okay, how's the best way to explain this? Well, we have a concept, right? If we have a cylinder, let's say, right, something like that. The general concept being that, let's say our light source is coming from this direction. You're going to have a core shadow, right, coming down something like that. Then you're going to have shadow in this side. And then you're going to have something called a cast shadow, which is the shadow coming off the object, something like this, right? And then you have half tone as well, but that's a different kind of subject. So the idea is core shadow. Why is there a core shadow? Well, we call this the shadow side of the form, but what we're really, to some degree, what we're looking at is also, not only is it where the form is turned away from light, but from this surface here, we're getting bounce light, right? So the light photons are coming here, they're bouncing off the surface, and they're bouncing back in this direction, right? That's why this part of the form is lighter than where the core shadow is. Right, that's kind of the idea. So that's why the core shadow tends to be the darkest side of the form, or the darkest point of the shadow. Excuse me. Hopefully I'm not going to butcher this as a concept. It's a while since I've done a light and tone kind of description. So that's conceptually the idea. Now, let's say we have a piece of a ribbon, right, doing something like that. So it's got a very sharp edge, right? So you're going to have you know, a heavy core shadow, and then you're going to have your shadow down here, let's say, right, something like that. The softer that curve becomes, let's say now we take that same idea with the ribbon, but the ribbon is just doing something like this, right? Theoretically, there might be a core shadow, but the larger and softer the curve, the less core shadow there is. So in something like this, let's say this is the lit surface, you know, we're going to have our form turning away from space, something like this. There might not be any core shadow, right? Because the turn is so soft that as we go away from light, what we end up really is just with a gradient that gets darker as it turns away from the light, right? That kind of idea. So you're not always going to have core shadow. So you can't just look at a figure and just core shadow all the way down. The softer the turn, the softer the transition from light into tone, right? The harder the turn, the more potential for core shadow and this kind of concept. I hope that makes sense. Zoni then says, I'm actually asking about outlines of the body. I know you, oh, so this has not got anything to do with shadow. Which line should be thinner and thicker? All right, so that was, well, hopefully that wasn't a waste of time. Hopefully you guys got something out of that as a concept. But I was wondering about influences of light and shadow on the outline of the body. I don't really... Here's the thing. Theoretically, there is no such thing as an outline. All a line is the turning of a form in space, the edge of a form, a volume or a mass turning in space, and the line is a representation of that volume or that mass turning in space, right? There are no lines on figures, right, or in the natural world. It's a man-made convention as a way of describing a form turning. So as far as when do I go thick and when do I go thin with my line, a lot of it comes down to where I want to emphasize the concept of potentially of mass, maybe, of weight, line dynamics, shape dynamics, design language. All of these things become a consideration, right? So I might have, you know, be doing the long line of a thigh where the line will go quite thin, but then when I come down to the knee where there's tension, or I want to emphasize the end of a long line, I might go thicker with my pencil. But it's not always. It's very, very line and case dependent, if that makes sense. There's no one size fits all. But generally speaking, where I want to emphasize something, or it might be the opposite, might come out of a very thin, intricate knee, and then I'm going into a thick, heavy thigh, and I'll give some extra weight to the line to represent the weight and the mass of that leg. But it could, as I just explained, I could completely flip that concept depending on the moment, right? There's not a formula for it in that way. Okay. Good, I'm glad that wasn't a waste of time. Well, here's the thing, Lacarte. I get in concept what you're saying. Lacarte says, quite important to grasp the concept of core shadows. There's no volume without them. There can actually be volume without them. It's just, the softer the turn, the less core shadow there is potentially. So the less core shadow, potentially the smoother, the rounder the transition, right? Core shadows generally tend to show themselves where the transition gets harder, as I was just showing. Hope that makes sense. I don't want to I don't want to mislead anyone, but this is my thoughts on it. Look at the natural world. Look at the reference that we're drawing from. You can see, like, you know, you might have a very soft shadow going from the lit surface here, right? And then you get the deltoid, you get a very, very soft tone in here, a half tone in here. And then we come to this plane here where it's in full light again, right? There's not necessarily any core shadow there, but we're still describing form. So there can be volume and mass without core shadow, right? But yes, core shadow is a very, very useful and important tool for describing volume and form and the turn of form going away from light. But what causes a core shadow is ultimately reflected light, right? You need to remember that. If there is no reflected light, there will be no core shadow. Okay. Let's draw. All right, lovely pose here. Once again, just pick this one. I just felt like there was so much. It's quite a quiet pose. It feels like there's so much to get our teeth into, so to speak. Let's find her spine. For those of you who don't have the reference, we're looking at what is essentially a back view. It's a 3/4 back, though, at the upper torso. Lecture over, back to drawing. Yes, exactly. Well, hopefully it's useful. Head of the humerus is about there, right? It's quite pushed up. She's pushing her arm up here. Then the elbow is actually coming back into the form. It's almost at her spine, right? Elbow's about here, so she's kind of pushing back this way. Then this hand is coming down. Wrist is about here. The great thing about things like core shadow and light and the properties of light is it's very easy for you to test your, you know, just every object around you is going to be representing to some degree or another the concepts that we just discussed, and you can test that kind of concept out. Okay, so this arm is coming out to about here. That will do for now. I know that there's more to this rib cage, the volume of this rib cage on this side. So the center line is there. Rib cage is sitting in here. Alright, this music's not going to work for me. Alright. Yeah, rib cage is really coming out to about there. Scapula. is going, you know, her arm is kind of pushed back and her scapula is reacting to that, obviously. Sitting in there. Tricep is sitting in here. Oblique. Iliac crest coming down. Sacrum's quite low. It's because she's kind of leaning forward with her hips. So sacrum is about there. Right, then we get this long kind of line of the oblique coming down this way. This leg going away from us. Very foreshortened. Going down like so. And this other leg, we can't really see it, but we can imagine it's going up this way. Well, we can see that part, obviously. We can't see her knee because her arm is actually resting on it. Her hand is coming across like this. Hand is sitting here. Okay. Okay. So yeah, head of the humerus is here. We have to kind of do a bit of detective work, but the chromium process is coming out this way. Ridge of the scapula is coming down here. You make a very good point, Margot. Arms and legs that go away are always a bit frustrating to me. They look kind of minuscule when I put them in. But yet I think they're correct from a measurement perspective. You have, yeah, we've talked about this before, right? With foreshortening in general, you kind of have to trust the process. You have to trust that they will work, if you know what I mean. But yeah, it can bump you very easily. It bumps me all the time. Okay. So, tricep is coming up this way. Something like that. I want to get this arm in first because once again, I know I've got to push and pull my measurement here a little bit, and if this is right, then I can move forward with a little bit more confidence, if you know what I mean. Okay, so very, very subtle shapes going on here, but the bicep is kind of coming up this way. Coming up. And our deltoid starts about here. But then we have this transition here. Hopefully this is going to make sense when we get some light and tone onto it, because as a line drawing it feels a bit discombobulated. Okay. Compression there of the scapula. Something like that. Tricky, tricky. Something like that. Yeah, she's sitting on a form that is really, because it's not a conventional form, it's almost like she, you know, the equivalent of her sitting on a rock, right? It's not even. And that leg going away from us there. A lot of very subtle shapes. Something like that. As long as we can agree that it's more difficult to draw teeth than hands. Well, that's a loaded statement. Sure, we can agree on that. Yeah, I don't draw teeth too often. Well, I do in my day job, but not doing this. I've really got this. These ribs are really revealing themselves here, but I really don't want to get into it. Here's that foreshortened leg marker. It feels minuscule, I do agree. Foreshortening will do that to us. And this leg is going down this way, but it's kind of obscured from view. Something like that. So that pectoral muscle coming off the rib cage. So we want to be mindful of that, obviously attached to the humerus. Something like that. All right. Thanks, Margot. Don't know about that, but I always appreciate the never shy to accept a compliment. or a kind of like rim light almost on this forearm. Once again, you know, our light source is really directly above. All right. Let's keep going here. All right, that's 20. Don't know if I want to get into the tone on this one, he says as he starts to put in core shadow. It's pretty complex, and a lot of it's in shadow. So we might just be better off. Let's see. Yeah, we'll put in a bit. But like all of this is in shadow, right? Essentially. I think that'll do it. You can kind of suggest it. Okay. Yeah, once again, you know, like just the one thing this model has in abundance is great design language opportunities. Not sure I've really caught them, but you know, you get the idea. That's funny, Lulu. All right, give me something. I'm just starting out on the subject, says ZDex. ZDex, on my channel, you will find a video called Figure Drawing Fundamentals. It's a 44-minute long video where I cover pretty much all the fundamentals. Go check it out. It's a really good place to start, if I say so myself. All right. And then there's a bunch of other videos there, and yeah, just come to the sessions. Come draw along. It is a bit of a journey, but yeah, it's, in my opinion, a journey worth taking. Okay, we are at an hour and a half. You guys know what this means. But I don't want to shortchange because I feel like I'd sooner miss a pose. Let's just keep going in the spirit that we have been, because this next pose is a doozy too. So just give me a sec. I just need a break for 1 second. Well, thank you, Gengar. Appreciate it. Start at the very beginning. It's a very good place to start, exactly. Yeah, there's a lot to learn, but you know, you build up incrementally. You don't have to learn it all overnight. You can't learn it all overnight. It just takes a bit of time. All right. Yeah, let's go. Maybe we'll try and do a 15 here, huh? Yeah, these are great poses, aren't they? I agree. T2. Okay, so we've got a lot of tension on the clavicles. All right, they're getting pushed way up. It's almost like she doesn't want to put all her weight on that skull thing, which I don't blame her. That's the impression I'm getting from weight distribution, because it doesn't look like she's putting a ton of weight on her lower torso. So we want to try and capture that. So let's see. I'm just going to throw in a curve. It's just really the spirit of the top line, but not really more than that for now. Then we got her, I can't see it, but we've got her rib cage kind of coming down this way, then coming down to her pelvis. Something like that. I'm just trying to find the really, really basic lines of action here. Then that left leg is kind of going down, isn't it? I'm obviously, well, maybe I am going to get the whole thing on. Or most of it anyway. That leg going down in that direction. Okay, so I've got enough now to at least find a center line. And we need the center line, because our manubrium and our clavicles are coming off that, and that's really what's driving this whole piece. So with that said, manubrium is going to be about here, clavicle shooting up in this direction, head of the humerus, it's like mad tension, and this arm is going down this way. Something like that, down to the wrist and the hand sitting there. Same on this side, clavicle going way up. Head of the humerus is about there. And this arm is coming out like so. See that little shadow right down here below, right, the manubrium's here, right, you can see the little shadow there. That's really giving you a sense of where the arch of the rib cage is. That's where something called the xiphoid process is. So it's a really useful kind of little landmark to be aware of. Rib cage sitting in here, give or take. pectoral muscle coming down this way. I'm going to pull that up just a tiny bit, that xiphoid process. Something like that. All right, let's see now. Okay, so pectorals here, shoulder is pushing right up there. Right, you can see the end of the clavicle's journey right up there. Yeah, her arms are just under mad tension. Brachioradialis starting its journey about here. Something like that. Oblique is sitting there. You can see the iliac crest sitting about there. It's come across the form. Aces is about there. Oblique sitting in there roughly. Gluteus medius coming down to gluteus maximus sitting in there. This has been quite the workout today, huh guys? A proper workout. Well, I knew it would be. You don't get all of this for free when a model's giving so much complexity, you know. You're going to have to earn your keep. Yeah, I'm still just blocking in, like there's just too many things to consider. So I'm just going to take my time with it. I might need to pull this arm in just a tiny bit. Hope there's time to do the next post as well. It's quite nice. Yeah, I'd say we'll have time to check it out. Are you reading the last page of the book there, Lacan? It's hard to fight the urge to rotate the paper. Yeah, I know that feeling. And obviously if we were working digitally, that would be really easy. I can't return the paper. I don't have that option. So that gets ruled out real quick as an idea. Because if I rotate my paper, it's going to be havoc on the camera. But physically, I don't think I can actually. Did I say 15 for this one? Good Lord. Well, that might have been a tad optimistic. Let's see. Got these lovely rhythmical ideas coming from the oblique here, coming down the leg. Something like that. And yeah, that other leg going down in this direction. I'll just suggest it there. But I do think I'm going to call this one in a couple of minutes, because I think we've said kind of what needs to be said. And if we want to get one more pose in, all right. For those of you who are working with the reference, you can see very, very in clear ways the transition from the coarse shadow into the reflected light under the breast, and then into cast shadow on her rib cage, right? So you have the form that's in light, coarse shadow, reflected light, cast shadow, right? You see the light bouncing back up onto that form and illuminating it, right? It's fascinating. So it's like under here, it's almost illuminated, right? It's really cool. And then it gets darker under here as you get into the cast shadow. Helps that the floor is white. Oh, for sure, for sure. Yeah. Like, yeah, if you look at her, you know, the bottom of her right leg, you can see that light bouncing off the floor. But interestingly enough, Lecarte, notice how that is a cooler light than the light under her breast, where she's getting bounce light off her forearm. So it's a warmer light. Right? The bounce light coming off the floor is cooler. So just for those of you who paint, something to keep in mind. All right, I think I'm done here. That was a fun little exercise though. That was quite a challenge. They've all been a challenge. What am I saying? Let's do one last pose. Let's see this next one. Oof, another tricky one. I wish I'd changed the order in hindsight between this one and the very last one, because I wouldn't mind doing a standing pose. I feel like we've been doing quite a few crouching poses, haven't we? Or seated poses. I know that you wanted to, so I forget who it was who said it, would like to do this next one next, this seated one. Let me suggest you do it in your own time. I'm going to jump to the final pose, which is a standing pose. We're just going to make it a 10-minute pose. Just because I'm mentally drained. I don't have the mental fortitude to work out another puzzle. It may not be too tricky, but I'm in the mood to just do a standing pose for the last pose, if you don't mind. But I'll leave it up there, and you guys can do it, you know, in your own time. Yeah, let's jump to the final pose. 10-minute. And yeah, let's have a bit of fun, and then we will wrap things up for today. Art is easy to learn, it just takes practice. Well, easy to learn, a lifetime to master, right? Something like that. I don't think it's easy to learn, actually. I must say, Chai, I would have to disagree. I don't think it's easy to learn to pick up a pencil and to make a mark. It's not easy to learn. Drawing's hard. Drawing remains hard, honestly. No matter how much practice you get, of course you get better. You get more accomplished. You get more consistent results. But trust me, drawing's hard. It just is. If it's easy for you, then fantastic. But I have the great privilege to be able to say I've worked with some of the greatest artists in the world, and I've never once heard any of them say it's easy. Okay, last pose. Am I getting thrown shade on the chat? I don't know what's going on. All right, 10-minute. Let's aim for 10. I think it's the best form of torture I've ever undertaken, but I love it. Yeah, something like that, Margot, right? As I've said far too often in my classes and my streams, you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. If you can do that and not lose it, then you win. I'm probably not going to draw below the knee. I don't find that lower leg particularly interesting. It feels a little stiff to me and doesn't really do anything for me. Okay, so manubrium, clavicle. It's So she's holding this stick that is running right down the form all the way here. It's worth putting that in. We can use it for measurement as much as anything. Pectoral muscle pulling right down. Manubrium, arch of the rib cage. Yeah, tell you guys, I am absolutely shattered. Today has been really mentally challenging. This leg is, if her navel is here, I think this knee is like over here, right? This is one of those drawings, if you can't see the reference, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Maybe it will as the drawing progresses, but right now it's kind of another one of these, you know, this model, she just tends to hang her weight or distribute her weight in very unusual ways, which is great, but definitely hard to conceptualize without having the reference in front of you. It's got a very exaggerated quality to it. And she's kind of going away from us, like the rib cage is going away from us, right? She's actually got this foot. Her ankle is on the other side of this stick, isn't it? My proportions are off. I'll come back to that. Okay, let's keep going. Well, we're at 9 minutes already, that's absurd. Alright, let's keep going. Yeah, I can just feel my energy levels just plummet. Anyway, we'll soldier on for a couple more minutes. It's this other leg that's super tricky. Alright, let's see if we can do something with this thing. I'm not making any promises. Navel here. Something like that. Tibia coming down. Yeah, this is a mess. See, went too deep. Yikes. Oh well, I'm going to call it, guys. I can't think straight. We did some crackers today, didn't we? Yeah, me too, Margot. I'm a little weary, to say the least. I'm absolutely exhausted, but in a good way. I think that was a really productive stream. I hope you guys enjoyed it. All right, see, I've got to just stop. Let go, man. Stop. All right. Okay, folks, what is it? It's Thursday, isn't it? Sorabai, you are a little late to the party, my friend. We are literally wrapping this thing up. Okay, but you can always replay it. You can relive it in real time, or you know what I mean. It's Thursday. So for those of you who just come to the Monday and Thursday class or sessions, have a wonderful weekend. For the rest of you, or those that feel so inclined, I do the daily practices. Ironically, not every day, but I do a daily practice now. I'm trying to weave it into this schedule. But generally, I only give like 2 or 3 hours notice. So for those of you who might be interested in that, you could hit the notification button thing on YouTube, and it will then alert you and let you know that there's one coming up. I might do one tomorrow. They're shorter than these, usually about an hour they have been up to now, and I do show the reference on the screen for those. But it's censored in as much as garments are being worn, or, you know, a top and a bottom, or you get the idea. Whereas obviously these are more generally uncensored sessions for those who have access to the reference. But I will say this, the daily streams, they will stay visible to non-members for about, well, until I do the next one, basically 24 to 48 hours. And then I will be putting them as a member benefit. So if you don't catch it in real time and you do want to see those and you don't want to be a member, you want to catch them quickly. Guys, it's been fun. I'm absolutely shattered. But that was a really good practice. I think we did some fascinating poses. Bravo to our model. She was absolutely stellar. We will draw her again for sure. So with that said, yeah, probably back tomorrow. Might take the weekend off, but I'll probably come back tomorrow, probably around the same time, around 5 p.m. GMT, and might start a little earlier. We don't know. We just don't know. But if I don't see you then, have a wonderful weekend and take care of yourselves, and I will see you all very, very soon. All right, cheers, take care, bye.